The Ilinden Uprising remains one of the most defining moments in Macedonia's struggle for national liberation. Though ultimately crushed, it marked a bold step toward self-determination and revealed the depth of a people's yearning for freedom. The path to rebellion, however, was anything but straightforward. By early 1903, within the internal Macedonian revolutionary organization, IMRO, the idea of launching an armed uprising had sparked heated internal debate. In January of that year, a congress convened in Thessaloniki under the leadership of Ivan Garvanov. 17 delegates gathered, but the congress lacked broad representation. Many major figures, such as Goce Delchev, Pere Toshev, and Janez Andansky, were absent. Critics condemned the gathering as dominated by city leaders and teachers out of touch with the situation on the ground. To some, even Garvanov's central committee appeared illegitimate. It had not been elected by all districts. Still, Garvanov was convinced an uprising would force Europe's hand and bring foreign intervention against the Ottomans. He pushed for revolt that spring. Delchev, however, strongly opposed the move. He warned that the country lacked sufficient arms and preparation, and that Europe was unlikely to intervene. He called for patience, a carefully prepared uprising, not a reckless rush. His efforts to halt the Congress's decision ultimately failed. Then, tragedy struck. On May 4th, 1903, Goce Delchev was killed in a skirmish with Ottoman troops in the village of Banitsa. His death robbed the movement of one of its wisest and most respected leaders, just as the countdown to war began. Before the uprising took full shape, a dramatic act shook the Balkans. In late April 1903, a secretive group of Macedonian anarchists known as the Gemidzi unleashed a wave of bombings across Thessaloniki. Their targets symbolized Ottoman control and foreign influence: the Ottoman Bank, the post office, the gas works, and the French steamship Guadalquivir. Their aim was simple: draw the attention of the great powers and force them to act. The attack succeeded in generating international headlines, but brought severe consequences at home. Innocent lives were lost, and a wave of arrests and brutal crackdowns swept through Thessaloniki and Bitola. Tensions across Macedonia escalated. The stage was now set for a wider revolt. Between May 2nd and 7th, 1903, delegates of the Bitola Revolutionary District gathered in Smilevo to finalize the decision. Even among this well-prepared district, doubts lingered. While Bitola had strong revolutionary infrastructure, other regions, such as Vilayet, were not ready for war. But the decision was made: the uprising would go ahead. A three-man general staff was elected to lead the revolt: Dame Gruev, Boris Serafov, and Anastas Lozanchev. Their task was immense: determine the start date, oversee logistics, and coordinate insurgent actions across Macedonia. Revolutionary committees mobilized. Armed bands shifted from town centers to remote mountain bases. Supplies, guns, ammunition, food, and medical stores were gathered. Villagers were trained, and insurgents were drilled in preparation for the fight. On July 26, 1903, the General Staff issued the official proclamation of the uprising. It called for rebellion to begin on August 2nd, Ilinden, the feast of Saint Elijah. Alongside it came a formal declaration sent to the great powers, explaining the movement's goals, and a warning to Eastern railways about planned disruptions to transportation. Macedonia was preparing for war. At dawn on August 2nd, Macedonia erupted. The Ilinden Uprising began, spreading across nearly every district. Though intensity varied, the strongest flare came from the Bitola Revolutionary District. Insurgents struck quickly and strategically, cutting telegraph lines, sabotaging railway stations and attacking Ottoman garrisons and estates. These opening moves signaled a coordinated, disciplined campaign. But as the smoke cleared from the initial strikes, the real battle for Macedonia began, region by region, village by village. In the Costur, Kastoria region, around 2,000 insurgents rose up. On August 5th, they captured the town of Klisura. A week later, after a hard-fought battle led by Vasil Chakalarov, they seized Neveska, modern-day Nimfayo, though they were soon forced to withdraw. Elsewhere, Lazar Pop-Traikov, alongside Voivoda Steryovsky, launched an attack on Zerveni, a Pomak village with a notorious Turkish garrison. After a lengthy battle, the insurgents captured and burned the village, a symbolic act against its history of terrorizing Macedonian communities. The Kostur fighters soon faced their greatest test at the Battle of Frangovica. Around 600 insurgents stood against thousands of Ottoman Askari soldiers, backed by artillery. The insurgents held their ground, repelling every assault. A bold counterattack even pushed Ottoman forces back to Sliveni, inflicting over 200 casualties. The insurgents lost only 6 men. As the battle wore on, the Kostur detachment split. Chakalarov led 900 fighters into Albania to raid hostile Bashi-Bazuk villages, while Pop-Traikov and Ivan Popov led 500 fighters toward Mariovo to ignite revolt in the Prilep region. But what they found was silence. No revolt, no support. Demoralized, over 300 men returned to Kostur. Pop-Traikov and about 150 remained. They soon joined forces with Gyorche Petrov, whose efforts in Prilep had also failed. Together with Luka Ivanov and Jovo Jovovic, they planned a daring attack on the railway near Lerin. But near the village of Chanishte, 160 insurgents walked into an ambush. 5,000 Ottoman soldiers surrounded them. What followed was one of the uprising's most remarkable standoffs. Pop-Traikov's leadership and the determination of fighters like Popov and Jovovic kept the group together. Despite being encircled, they fought off repeated Turkish assaults. Under cover of night, they broke through the Ottoman lines. They left behind hundreds of dead Turks. Estimates range from 200 to 400, at the cost of just 4 dead and 6 wounded. Pop-Traikov, however, was badly injured in the face and withdrew to Kostur for treatment. Facing overwhelming numbers, 15,000 Ottoman troops, the Kostur insurgents ultimately chose to retreat on August the 27th, prioritizing the safety of the civilian population. In the Lerin-Florina region, 2,000 insurgents focused on crippling infrastructure. On August 2nd, they destroyed the Exisu railway station, cut telegraph lines, and dismantled bridges and roads. Near Ezerets, 300 fighters faced 2,000 Ottoman troops with artillery. Reinforced by comrades from Kostur, they held their ground and secured control of the western Lerin Mountains, maintaining it until August 28th. Meanwhile, in Kichevo, insurgents struck at night. Just past midnight on August 2nd, 3 detachments surrounded the town. A bugle call and a cry of "Hurrah!" launched the assault. Ottoman soldiers panicked and fled to the fortress, where they were met with insurgent fire. Though the attackers withdrew after half an hour, they left 20 Turkish soldiers dead. Other battles soon followed. In Izvor, a garrison in a fortified tower came under siege from local insurgents. Reinforcements were delayed but eventually arrived, launching a second round of combat. Jerov's insurgents flanked them, causing a hasty Ottoman retreat back to Kichevo. Turkish casualties, around 50. Insurgent losses, 8 killed, 6 wounded. Even villages like Vraneshtika and Lavchani joined the fight. Askari troops and Bashi Bazuk clashed with local defenders, but revolutionary detachments arrived in time to repel the attacks. Skirmishes flared up across the region as both sides fought to gain control. By August 19th, key strongholds like Upper and Lower Kopachka were in insurgent hands. In Ohrid, 250 insurgents launched coordinated attacks beginning August 3rd. Their primary target was a heavily fortified Ottoman tower, defended by 100 Askari. The battle dragged on for 2 days. Though the insurgents avoided casualties, reinforcements eventually forced them to retreat. Another key assault, on Sirula Hill, was led by Hristo Uzunov and Dejan Dimitrov. They attacked a fortified 200-man garrison with 150 fighters. The defenders were near surrender when Turkish reinforcements from Ohrid arrived, setting the village ablaze and attacking civilians. Prioritizing the safety of villagers, Dimitrov withdrew, relocating the population to nearby mountains. These failed assaults handed the Turks strategic high ground from which they could launch counterattacks, weakening the insurgents' grip on the Ohrid region. In Prespa, on August 2nd, insurgent groups led by Arsov gathered in Bolno. A local incident, a villager killing a cattle thief, became the region's first casualty. Olchev's detachment of 150 men opened fire near Resen, burning several buildings before withdrawing. Skirmishes erupted around Kriveni, Zlatari, and Izbishta, while Stefan Meshkov led a successful attack near Petrino. In Podmochani, a brief insurgent strike killed several Turks before retreating. Local bands attacked Khans along key roads, burning garrisons, killing Ottoman guards, and disrupting movement. In Stenge, 20 Turkish guards were killed during a daring ambush. Despite early successes, the Prespa region became a target of systematic Ottoman retaliation. Entire villages, Bolno, Petrino, and others, were burned. With each passing day, the repression escalated, and civilians were forced to flee to the mountains. On the Orthodox holiday of Saint Elijah, Ilinden, the village of Smilevo was buzzing with secret preparations for revolt, masked by the festivities. Women and children discreetly distributed ammunition and messages under the watchful eyes of the Ottoman military. Dame Gruev, along with the general staff, Giesh, was positioned above the village near Mount Bigla, where a priest sanctified the revolutionary flag. At dusk, just as the Ottoman trumpet signaled evening prayers and soldiers shouted praises to the Sultan, a coordinated surprise attack erupted. Gunfire rang out from surrounding homes as rebels shouted slogans like "Down with the Sultan" and "Long live freedom." Gruev and the general staff descended into the village and joined the fray, bringing the rebel force to about 200 fighters. Surviving Ottoman troops retreated into the school and nearby stone houses, leading to an intense firefight that lasted all night. Some attempted to take shelter in the large house of Georgi Churanov, but with his consent, the house was burned down by the rebels to deny it as a stronghold. Although the rebels captured a stockpile of ammunition and tried, unsuccessfully, to demolish other buildings with dynamite, they faced stiff resistance. According to Ottoman records, the initial attack left 8 soldiers dead and 14 wounded. On August 3rd, the general staff ordered non-combatant villagers to evacuate to a nearby location called Golem Gar, and by noon, Smilevo was nearly empty. Fighting continued with the besieged Ottoman troops, but reinforcements, 400 Ottoman soldiers, soon arrived. Gruev ordered a tactical retreat, but this message didn't reach all units in time. Stoyan Donsky's detachment ambushed the reinforcements, killing 10 Ottoman soldiers and a captain, but also losing 1 rebel. Eventually, Donksi was ordered to withdraw, while the newly arrived Ottoman forces fortified themselves opposite the rebel headquarters. On August 4th, the Ottoman army managed to re-enter Smilevo, rescue their surrounded troops, and burn parts of the village. Mistaking returning villagers for a second wave of rebel attackers, the Ottoman soldiers panicked and temporarily retreated again. Tensions rose among villagers, who resented the general staff's cautious withdrawal tactics, feeling abandoned. The next day, a combined Ottoman regular and irregular force, Bashibozuks, attempted another assault from the village of Obednik but were repelled. A second attack from Pribiltsi also failed. After these failures, commanders Boris Sarafov and Atanas Lozanchev moved on to lead operations in other regions. For the next 20 days, no Ottoman forces entered the Smilevo area. During this time, Stoyan Donski led efforts to strengthen rebel defenses, digging trenches and organizing protection for the remaining civilian population sheltered at Golem Gar, where food and security were coordinated. Nowhere did the Ilinden Uprising shine brighter than in Krushevo. Here, socialist ideals merged with national liberation, creating not just a rebellion, but a republic. 8 insurgent detachments, about 750 fighters strong, were positioned throughout the town. Their targets, the barracks, post office, and Ottoman government buildings. Just before midnight on August 2nd, fighting broke out earlier than planned, triggered by an accidental encounter with an Ottoman patrol. The main target, the Hukumat, the local Ottoman administrative building, was quickly surrounded. Gendarmes refused to surrender. Kerosene was poured around the building and set alight. Most defenders died in the flames or were killed trying to escape. With the post office and municipal buildings also taken, only the barracks remained. It was the most fortified point in the town. Turkish soldiers inside kept up steady gunfire, pinning down insurgent advances. Pitu Guli's famed 300-man detachment was called in. When the decision was made to torch the barracks, kerosene bombs were thrown, setting it ablaze. Of the garrison, only 17 soldiers and 1 officer survived and fled to Aldansi. By 4 a.m. on August 3rd, Krushevo was free. 10 insurgents had fallen, and 6 more were wounded, but the liberation had succeeded. The very next day, Karev and the insurgent staff entered town to triumphant cheers. Karev gave a revolutionary speech proclaiming the Krushevo Republic, the first attempt at Macedonian self-governance. A provisional government was formed with Karev as president. Trenches were dug, villagers were armed, and makeshift workshops produced and repaired weapons. It was an experiment in local rule and unity, welcoming Macedonians, Vlachs, and others alike. But the Republic's days were numbered. Alarmed by the scale of the uprising, the Ottomans escalated their response. Ömer Rüştü Pasha was initially tasked with suppressing the revolt, commanding up to 50,000 troops. His cautious approach failed to produce results, and he was replaced by the more aggressive Nazım Pasha. Nazım Pasha devised a sweeping plan to crush the rebellion, starting with retaking Krushevo. The task fell to Bahtiyar Pasha, who commanded an imposing force of 15,000 to 18,000 soldiers, artillery, and cavalry. The plan: encircle and destroy the Republic. On August 10th, the Ottomans began their approach, facing the high ground held by Pitu Guli and his fighters. The battle was brutal. Outnumbered and outgunned, Guli's men held fast, defending every inch of terrain. Guli himself fought at the front, inspiring his fighters with fearless determination. But the enemy was overwhelming. After hours of intense fighting, Ottoman forces began to break through. Guli and many of his men fell in battle, his death becoming a symbol of ultimate sacrifice. With the main defense broken, the Ottomans entered Krushevo on August 12th. The Republic had lasted only 10 days. What followed was merciless. The town was plundered and partially burned. Macedonian and Vlach civilians were beaten, arrested, and killed. The dream of a free Krushevo was extinguished, but its defiance would never be forgotten. The fall of Krushevo marked a turning point. Though resistance flickered on in some areas, the Ottoman counteroffensive quickly gained momentum. Villages were torched across the Bitola Vilayet. Crops were destroyed. Thousands of Macedonians fled into the mountains or across the border as refugees. Ottoman troops targeted not only fighters, but anyone suspected of sympathizing with the movement. Internationally, the brutality shocked Europe. Russia and Austria-Hungary condemned the crackdown and increased diplomatic pressure on the Ottoman Empire. This led to the Merzsteg reforms in October 1903, an attempt by the great powers to stabilize the region. These reforms promised judicial changes, foreign oversight of the gendarmerie, and civil protections. But they were largely ineffective, seen by many Macedonians as a hollow gesture meant to defuse public outrage. Though the uprising was defeated, Ilinden was far from a failure. It galvanized the Macedonian national movement. The Krushevo Republic became a lasting symbol, a glimpse of self-rule and unity in the heart of Ottoman Macedonia. The uprising forced the Macedonian question into international discourse and awakened a deeper sense of national identity. Stories of heroism, like Pitu Guli's last stand and Karev's vision of equality, were woven into national memory. The struggle shifted from secret preparations to open revolt. Though crushed, the spirit of Ilinden endured. It would take decades for Macedonia to achieve autonomy and later independence. But Ilinden became its cornerstone, a reminder that the road to freedom is built on sacrifice, courage, and the unyielding belief that a people can shape their own destiny.